You might have noticed a YouTube channel called Prof Edward Dutton, the Jolly Heretic. On first glance, it might seem like it's just another random channel with slightly bizarre content hosted by yet another eccentric Englishman with a PhD and an opinion. But if you look at the video titles, you'll find they're fixated on IQ, fertility, genetics, and something he calls spiteful mutants. He cites numerous scholarly papers, including many of his own publications. But Dutton is not a professor, and his channel is attempting to defend racism with pseudo-academia. Dutton is not a professor. This may come as a surprise since Dutton's channel is literally called Prof Edward Dutton, the Jolly Heretic, where Prof is clearly short for professor. Since Dutton calls himself a professor on his YouTube channel, what justification can there be for saying he isn't one? Let's look at the website which accompanies the channel. On the homepage, we're met with this paragraph, which says, quote, "I like researching controversial topics. If someone insists that a certain area is out of bounds and you're immoral for even contemplating it, then that is where new discoveries are going to lie." End quote. If that bowl of word salad doesn't wave a few red flags immediately, you may find my video informative. On the other hand, if you've already started reading between the lines and you have a good idea of where this is going, then this video will very likely confirm your suspicions and will save you the time diving deeper into the increasingly murky depths of Edward Dutton's channel. Dutton's website also has a brief biographical note describing his academic and professional experience. One paragraph stands out. It reads, quote, "I was made docent of the anthropology of religion and Finnish culture at Oulu University in Finland. I'm based in Oulu in 2011. The word docent is translated as habilitation, adjunct professor, or adjunct reader." End quote. This appears rather awkwardly written. Why use the original Finnish word for this position and then explain 3 different ways in which it's translated into English without actually choosing one of them? The reason for this becomes clear when it is understood that Dutton is attempting to associate himself with the academic title professor without actually being qualified or holding that position. The academic position represented by the Finnish word docent is not equivalent to the position represented by the English term professor. It is an honorary title typically translated associate professor or adjunct professor. This differentiates it from the standard meaning of professor in English, which means specifically an academic with a doctorate who has achieved a specific level of high academic seniority within a department. Put simply, being a docent in Finnish is not the same as being a professor in English. It is an honorary term, which is more of a title than a position. Dutton's wording, combined with his rather vague claim to be based in Oulu, gives the impression that he is still working at Oulu University. However, on the 28th of June 2019, the university itself made a public tweet saying, quote, "Edward Dutton is not employed by University of Oulu and his actions do not represent our values emphasizing equality and responsibility. With current legislation, it is not possible to withdraw the title of docent, but discussions on that are ongoing with Finnish universities." End quote. This is significant since it not only exposed Dutton's implied employment at Oulu as misleading, but also demonstrates the university does not even consider him worthy of the title docent, let alone professor, and wishes to withdraw the title from him. One of the reasons for this is explained in a 19th of January 2021 article in The Gaudi, a student newspaper at the University of Aberdeen in Scotland. This article describes Dutton's academic studies at Aberdeen and then says, quote, "After Aberdeen, Dutton became a university teacher at Oulu in Finland. He was dismissed a few years later, having plagiarized a student's dissertation in a co-written piece with Richard Lynn." End quote. For the convenience of anyone who is unaware, the article explains, quote, "Lynn, it should be noted, is a eugenicist who advocates for the phasing out of certain races. No points for guessing which ones." End quote. Adding, quote, "You will sense a recurring theme with the kind of people Dutton involves himself with very soon." End quote. In March 2020, Dutton gave a 1-hour guest lecture at Aspero University, a private business school in Poland. Although Aspero is called a university, it is accredited only to higher education level and does not offer doctorates. Despite this, Dutton claims on his website that in September 2020 he was, quote, "appointed Professor of Evolutionary Psychology at Aspero University," end quote, and further claims, quote, "I contribute to the evolutionary psychology dimensions of this in an occasional capacity," end quote. There is no evidence for this at all. In fact, Aspero's own selling point, declared on their website, is, quote, Aspero, the only university where all tutors are entrepreneurs, end quote, which certainly excludes Dutton. There is no reference to any instruction in evolutionary psychology in the university's list of courses, nor even a department of psychology, and the only visible presence Dutton has in Aspero is a mention of his 2020 guest lecture on the Polish website. Dutton fixates on race and intelligence. As of the date of writing this script, 2nd of October 2023, Dutton lists on his website 133 articles or chapters he has written and had published in a range of journals and books from 2005 to 2023. This may give the impression of a prodigious volume of scholarly output which is taken seriously in mainstream academia. However, examining the subjects of these articles and the publications in which they have been printed, we find an interesting pattern. Firstly, his articles have unusual titles, illustrating an interest in a very narrow range of very specific topics. For example, Blue Hair and the Blues, dyeing your hair unnatural colours is associated with depression. Ethnic differences in achievements in darts. Ethnic differences in success in cricket. Racial differences in sexual dimorphism as an explanation for differences in Olympic track and field achievement. Cheating in sport and race differences in psychopathic personality. Why do Finns, Estonians and Finno-Ugric people in Russia have such high intelligence? Understanding the Simba effect. Why is the age-dependent increase in children's cognitive ability smaller in Arab countries than in Britain? Why do middle-class couples of European descent adopt children from Africa and Asia? Some support for the differential K model. Europeans have larger testes than sub-Saharan Africans, but lower testosterone levels. The last article title is more than a little odd, so let's look at the abstract to see if we can get a sense of the main idea. Here's how it starts. Quote, species and subspecies differ substantially in the size of their testicles. A study has found differences in average testis size when comparing Europeans and Northeast Asians. Other studies have found differences in testosterone levels between blacks, whites, and Northeast Asians, end quote. You might notice the specific choice of language here. The abstract opens with the statement, quote, species and subspecies differ substantially in the size of their testicles, end quote, and then goes on to compare Europeans and Northeast Asians as if these groups constitute different species, or a species and subspecies. It's certainly a strange choice of words for two groups which both belong to the same species. The abstract ends with these two sentences. Quote, a more polygynous mating pattern is associated with smaller testes and high testosterone, whereas a more competitive free mating pattern is associated with larger testes, helping with semen production and thus sperm competition. These findings are consistent with how individual level differences in ejaculate quality relate to life history speed, end quote. You can make of that gibberish what you will. Already this sample of article titles and this excerpt indicates Dutton is concerned with differences between ethnic groups, or races as he seems to see them, in particular differences of intelligence, behaviour and reproduction. A larger sample of his article titles substantiates this conclusion. Dutton publishes in Pseudo-Academia. On closer examination, we find that Dutton has published at least half of his articles in low-quality journals which can be called pseudo-academic at best, and which are known for the distribution of pseudo-scientific and racist ideas. 27 of his articles were published in Mankind Quarterly. This journal was founded in 1960 by white racists, and throughout its entire history, the journal has published white supremacist material, including pseudo-scientific theories such as scientific racism. Dutton used to be one of the editors. 16 of his articles were published in Personality and Individual Differences. This journal was founded by Hans Eysenck, an academic who believed intelligence is a hereditary trait and whose works on genetics, intelligence, race, and IQ tests has long been rejected by mainstream science, but is still quoted in right-wing and white supremacist circles. While this does not in itself discredit the journal, it is known for publishing papers arguing for scientifically dubious connections between race and behaviour, personality traits, or intelligence. In 2012, the editors were compelled to retract a paper arguing that darker skin pigmentation in humans was correlated to higher levels of aggression and sexuality. One of the authors, Jean-Philippe Rushton, credited Hans Eysenck as the inspiration for the paper, which also cited the work of Richard Lynn, whose 2002 paper claiming that black people were more psychopathic than white people had long before been debunked. Rushton, who died in 2012, was known for speaking at white supremacist meetings and for publishing work supporting the idea of scientific racism. In 2020, Western University in Canada, where Rushton had been a faculty member from 1977 to 2012, published a formal statement denouncing Rushton and his work, explaining, quote, "Much of his research was racist and attempted to find differences in intelligence between racialized groups and to explain them as caused by genetic differences between races," end quote, citing his, quote, "racist and flawed studies," end quote, and identifying his work as substantially funded by, quote, "the Pioneer Fund, a foundation formed in 1937 to promote eugenicist and racist goals," end quote. Another article published in the journal in 2012, entitled "The Decay of Western Civilization, Double-Relaxed Darwinian Selection," not only cites with approval the work of Richard Lynn, but also appeals explicitly to the ideas of eugenics, stating, quote, "Lynn reintroduced the classic eugenic idea that modern societies erode if Darwinian selection is relaxed," end quote, adding, quote, "Western civilization began to decay when the once predominant pre-industrial Darwinian natural selection process broke down in modern societies during the 19th and 20th centuries," end quote. The article's entire premise is that, quote, "the noble, ethically minded preservation of the weak inevitably leads to self-destruction," end quote, an explicitly eugenicist statement. The journal is full of such articles. 12 of Dutton's articles were published in Intelligence, a journal which has become increasingly known for publishing pseudoscience, particularly with regard to intelligence differences between ethnic groups. The journal has been criticized widely for publishing articles promoting eugenics and scientific racism. Richard Lynn, the eugenicist cited previously, used to be on the editorial board. 3 of Dutton's articles were published in Open Differential Psychology. This is one of 3 journals founded by Emil Kierkegaard, a right-wing eugenicist and racist, and David Piffer, who not only claims to have paranormal powers, such as telekinesis, but who works for a research institute founded by the eugenicist Richard Lynn, and makes pseudo-scientific claims about intelligence being hereditable. Both men argue for essentialized genetic intelligence differences between ethnic groups, as well as other forms of scientific racism. The Open Differential Psychology journal itself operates as a mouthpiece for these views. 3 of Dutton's articles were published in Radix Journal, a publication founded by American neo-Nazi Richard B. Spencer and published by Washington Summit Publishers, a white nationalist organization. The content consists of predictable white supremacist arguments. Dutton himself is on the editorial board. In 2018, Scott Greer was forced to step down from his position as writer and editor for the right-wing news website The Daily Caller after it was revealed he had written various racist and white supremacist articles for Radix Journal under the pseudonym Michael McGregor. 3 of Dutton's articles were published in PsychReg Journal of Psychology, a publication produced by the company PsychReg, the website of which states explicitly, quote, "PsychReg is a news media company and not a clinical company," end quote. The journal publishes articles on a very wide range of subjects related to psychology, and although it doesn't give the impression of having a racist agenda, it also doesn't give the impression of being particularly scholarly. Some articles are little more than opinion pieces, while others promote pseudoscientific beliefs, such as the article, "What Should You Do When You Are Seeking a Trusted Chiropractor?" It has no professional peer review process. As of the date of writing this script, the PsychReg Journal of Psychology has an impact factor of 0.42. An impact factor is a measure of a journal's influence in its field. Although impact factors are subject to certain kinds of manipulation, tracking them over time can provide a reasonable understanding of the journal's significance. It is worth noting that when impact factors are manipulated, they are typically done so to increase the score above 3, giving a false impression of its importance. Given that an impact factor of 3 is considered good in many fields, the fact that the PsychReg Journal of Psychology has an impact factor of less than 0.5 is strong evidence that in this case the impact factor is a reliable indicator that this particular journal is insignificant. Another of Dutton's articles was published in Homo, Journal of Comparative Human Biology. Homo was founded by Egon Freier von Eichstätt, one of the architects of the Nazis' racial theories, and although the content is now far more scientific and neutral, it still touches on contentious subjects such as the relation of human intelligence to various genetic or physical factors. As of the date of writing this script, the journal's impact factor is 0.6, indicating it is insignificant in its field. Dutton's article in this journal, co-authored with 3 other scholars, argued for a slight correlation between left-handedness and lower intelligence. Although this may not seem particularly sinister, the article also argued that left-handedness had been shown to correlate with, quote, several potential indicators of developmental instability, including autism, schizophrenia, immunological disorders, psychosexual disorders such as sexual fetishes and paedophilia, reduced life expectancy, and low birth weight, end quote. Given that the article also argued that left-handedness is increasing while, quote, developmental stability has likely been declining for over a century in Western populations, end quote, it seems the article is concerned with some kind of decline in the quality of Western societies, which is being caused by a decline in physical biology. If this seems like it's too much of a reach, it's worth considering Dutton's co-authors. One was Michael A. Woodley, who is known for a 2010 paper in which he argued that race is biological rather than a social construct, and who holds eugenicist and pseudoscientific views, believing that human intelligence has been in decline since the 19th century. A second co-author was Heitor Fernandez, who has co-authored articles arguing in favour of pseudoscientific theories of race with white supremacists and proponents of scientific racism. The third co-author was Satoshi Kanazawa, whose work has argued in favour of scientific racism and other pseudoscientific theories. Another of Dutton's articles was published in Journal for Political, Social and Economic Studies, a publication with a long-standing reputation for printing articles supporting white supremacist beliefs, in particular the belief that human intelligence is dependent on ethnicity. 3 of Dutton's book sections were written for books published by Imperium Press, Arctos, or Antelope Hill Publishing. All 3 companies publish white nationalist, white supremacist, far-right, and other racist material. In summary, 68 of the works in Dutton's list of publications, which is 47% of the total number, were published in journals which are, at the very best, on the fringe of academia. All but 2 of them regularly publish articles supporting or promoting right-wing views such as scientific racism and eugenics, as well as white nationalism and white supremacism. This does not look like an accident. At least 45 of Dutton's publications were co-authored with right-wing scholars holding eugenicist and or racist views and or pseudoscientific beliefs, such as Richard Lynn, Emil Kierkegaard, Michael Woodley, Heitor Fernandez, Satoshi Kanazawa, Guy Madison, and Dimitri van der Linden. This does not look like an accident either. Dutton is well aware that his work is overwhelmingly published in poor quality journals and seems deeply embittered by this fact. In an article on the 12th of January 2023 in the far-right online publication Vedere, he complained, quote, leftists have taken over all of the most prestigious journals and will duly mock research and try to dismiss it with appeals to authority if it is published in low-status journals, end quote. This is plainly conspiratorial thinking and demonstrates how distant Dutton is from mainstream academia. Dutton promotes fake universities. One of Dutton's videos is called Why You Probably Shouldn't Go to University, apart from Gegenuni, obviously, end quote, in which he expresses his objection to mainstream academia and promotes an institution called Gegen University, saying, quote, the Gegenuni is not against the university, but represents a counter-movement to the left-dominated university. We are for the university as it could be, but against the university as it is, end quote. Gegenuni's website, which is all in German, announces, quote, educate yourself scientifically and politically, beyond the universities, end quote. But what is this institution? The 2022 paper Right-Wing Extremism Online Communication in Times of Crisis, Challenges and Options for Intervention from the Perspective of Right-Wing Extremism and Platform Governance Research, published by the Hans Brodau Institute for Media Research at the University of Hamburg, describes Gegenuni as a, quote, right-wing extremist educational project, end quote, which is closely connected to the Identitären Bewegung, end quote, a German identitarian movement of right-wing nationalists and white supremacists. Gegen Uni is not a real educational institution and certainly not a real university. A 2021 article in German daily newspaper Frankfurter Rundschau identifies Gegen Uni as, quote, a limited liability company based in Frankfurt, end quote, with a business address provided by, quote, a company that rents out offices and co-working spaces and houses almost 40 other companies in the building, end quote. So Gegen Uni is a typical fraudulent academic institution without even a physical building, selling online courses and fake degrees. It's just another diploma mill. Dutton promotes Gegen Uni since he is one of the lecturers, and he encourages people to buy his so-called sociobiology course. Dutton has also produced course material for Alex University, another diploma mill with no academic accreditation, consisting of a website started by white supremacist Richard Spencer. The website offers courses by Spencer, Dutton, and white supremacist Mark Brahman, who has also written for Radix Journal and contributes regularly to the white supremacist forum Stormfront. Dutton is dangerous. Edward Dutton is a fake professor and right-wing extremist outside mainstream academia, and it is tempting to dismiss him as simply yet another racist crank. However, his work is cited and appealed to by a wide range of racist, white supremacist, and identitarian authors and organizations, giving him an online presence well beyond his own reach, making him far more influential and potentially dangerous than the average YouTube racist. His work is promoted by the Ulster Institute for Social Research, an organization founded by white supremacist Richard Lynn, and which was supported financially from 1971 to 1996 by the American non-profit organization Pioneer Fund. Founded in 1937 by eugenicists and white supremacists, the Pioneer Fund continues to support race-motivated research and anti-immigration lobbies. Dutton's work was cited by Richard J. Herrnstein and Charles Murray's 1994 book The Bell Curve, a popular publication which was not peer-reviewed, which made the case for the hereditability of IQ and genetics contributing significantly to differences in intelligence between ethnic groups. While the authors made an attempt to distance their work from racist implications, the book has been championed and exploited by promoters of so-called race realism and scientific racism. Whatever their motivations, the author's deliberate use of the unscientific and white supremacist work of Dutton does not encourage confidence. Dutton can also be found cited repeatedly over the last 5 years on Jordan Peterson's subreddit, which has 308,000 members as of the date of writing this script. While Dutton's work receives occasional criticism, it is clearly permitted on the forum, and it invariably receives support from some of the members. Dutton's work can also be found on the public question and answer forum Quora, where it is used to support various racist views. One post, made by a user called Brian White, who identifies as a scientist and whose content has 32 million views as of the date of writing this script, cites a paper by Dutton, co-authored by David Pieper and Emil Kierkegaard, both of whom produce pseudo-academic work on so-called scientific racism. Dutton's work has even been co-opted by racists and ethno-nationalists outside the traditional white supremacist Anglosphere. He can be found cited approvingly by the inaccurately named Society for the Dissemination of Historical Fact. This organization, according to the Japan-US Feminist Network for Decolonization, is, quote, a Japanese nationalist group that exists to publish English translations of Japanese revisionist materials on the internet and to send those materials to opinion leaders in politics and academia in the United States without their consent, end quote. Dutton is also connected with a large network of far-right white supremacist and identitarian content producers on YouTube and other online platforms, known commonly as the dissident right, including Morgoth's Review, Asher Logos, The Distributist, Endeavour, Charlemagne, Daughter of Albion, Ubersoy, Carl Benjamin, known online as Sargon of Akkad, Dr. Nima Parvini of the University of Surrey, known online as Academic Agent, Irish white nationalist Keith Woods, and British white supremacist Richard Spencer, all of whom promote each other's work even when they are in dispute. This gives Dutton an even greater reach beyond his own channel. However, more recently, Dutton has found his way into mainstream liberal political discourse. He has been interviewed positively more than once on the YouTube channel of Benjamin Boyce, a liberal culture warrior producing content opposing so-called wokeness. Boyce's enthusiastic welcome of Dutton into mainstream liberal discourse and his promotion of Dutton to his audience provides Dutton with a veneer of respectability and makes him even more influential. Boyce does not criticise or reveal Dutton's less liberal views, especially those which could give even Boyce's own viewership cause for concern. Unfortunately, it is very likely that Dutton's online presence and influence will become even greater as a result of his collaboration with the likes of Boyce.